Welcome to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. He's talking to today's industry leaders and entrepreneurs about the people side of their business.
Welcome to the Best Team Wins podcast, where we feature entrepreneurs and business leaders whose exceptional approach to the people side of their business has led to incredible results. My name is Adam Robinson, and for the next 25 minutes, I'll be your host as we explore how to build your business through better hiring. Today on the program, Max Yoder is the CEO of Lessonly, headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana, founded in 2012 with three other gentlemen, crossed the 100-employee threshold earlier this year, and on his way to 10,000, no doubt. So, the best learning happens through the real experiences shared by fellow entrepreneurs and business leaders. And, Max, we are really grateful to have you here to learn from you today. Welcome.
Adam, I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, thanks for making time.
You got it. So a couple of fun facts. Lessonly ranked as a leader in the G2 Crowd, which is a business software rating website. Think of it as Yelp for SaaS. G2 Crowd Corporate Learning Management Systems, and winner of the Momentum Report Winter 2019. G2 Crowd increasingly influential in determining who gets looks for deals. So that's
definitely
a big deal. So congratulations.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, we're really we're appreciative of that.
Max, you and your Chief Operating Officer, Connor Burt, were named as tech leaders on the 2018 International Customer Management Institute's inaugural Customer Experience Movers and Shakers list. Pretty cool. 2016 Indianapolis Business Journal, 40 under 40, and I'm sure lots of other accolades I missed, but it sounds like things
all good. All good. Yeah, thank you.
Things are going well. So we're here today to talk about the people side of Lessonly, but before we dive in, set the stage for us. Give us 30 seconds on what you do.
Yeah, we make training software, and we primarily sell it to sales teams and customer service teams. We think that they're really combating the rate of change more than any other team in a company. They have to deal with new processes, products, promotions. They need to know the answer before the customer asks the question. So we focus on helping those teams learn, practice, and then we kind of measure their performance to understand where we need to improve the learning and practicing. But the whole goal is, let's give the customer-facing teams the latest and greatest playbook. Let's build software to keep them all on the same page so that they can do better work.
That's great. If people want to learn more, where should they do that?
Lessonly.com would be great.
Okay. Very cool. All right. Well, let's talk about the business. Take us back to 2012. You and three others decided to kick this off. As you got beyond the founding team and started to have to bring folks into the business, talk with us about that transition, from the early belief to having to recruit people in from the outside.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was really intimidated by it because the business before I started a business before Lessonly called Quipple, and I never made a dime with Quipple. I ran it for a year and about 9-10 months. And then had to shut it down because it just wasn't a very good idea. I tried hard to make people buy it, but when there's not value, there's not value. So I was really nervous about kind of poaching anybody to come aboard and leave a steady job for something that might, again, not work out. And I think that that probably came through in my tone of just basically making sure that people knew exactly where we were at before they came aboard. I wanted them to have their eyes wide open. And I think that actually really helped because there was a lot of trust that created through the hiring process of saying, here's where we're at, here's where we struggle, here's where we have opportunities. I want you to know everything before you hop on, so you don't feel like, if something doesn't go the way we want it to, that you were kind of left in the dark. And then over time, things started working out better, and I wasn't hedging so much, which I'm sure was good for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the early days, it was probably a lot more of a sales process from your end. Now as an established business, you likely get to be, much more selective. What does the hiring process look like today, and what is the biggest influence on your decision to bring someone into the business?
Yeah, we have a recruiter named Ivan who does a great job on the screening side. We use tools like Predictive Index to see how people are wired, their dominance, their extroversion, their patience, their formality. And then we just do a pretty robust hiring and interviewing process, where we'll bring folks in, for individual interviews and then group interviews. I think what we try to do is do our best gauge at the interview stage, and if something isn't working out early on, we have those difficult conversations early on in the employee's tenure to kind of course correct, or if we can't course correct, find a new home. But I think that we're very emotional in the hiring process, and we're trying to use more and more data to kind of temper that emotion. And I think everybody's emotional in their hiring processes. But yeah, we just try to have we try to get a lot of different eyes and ears on each individual candidate, so that one person's bias or one person's kind of judgment doesn't muddy the water.
Yeah, I want to jump ahead to something we typically talk about later in the interview, and that's providing feedback. You mentioned early in the process, making a decision if it's not working out. That's paraphrasing your words. Tell me how that is evolved for you. I mean, it's always, I know for me, the hardest thing I ever have to do is giving feedback to someone who wants to be here that it's just not right. I mean, tell me about how that works in your head. It's tough, but necessary.
Yeah. So the goal that I am seeking is for every manager in the company not to ever have to sit down with an employee and say, my gut says this isn't working out. And because the employee's gut's probably going to be like, well, my gut says it is working out. And then we're arguing based on one another's guts. That's not a great place to be. If we've clarified responsibilities, if we've made agreements about timelines and what's expected of one another, we can see it not working out and those agreements not being met, in those kind of roles and responsibilities not being lived into. And that makes a difficult conversation easy. Otherwise, if we haven't clarified those things, we're really just working off of our gut. So I think the ultimate job of a manager is to not be making gut decisions, but be making decisions around agreements that have been made and not kept, or maybe agreements that have been made and kept. And those are the people you want to praise and promote. But the agreements that are made and not kept are the folks you really need to have the difficult conversations with. Does that help?
Now, where did you learn how to hire?
Experience. Sorry. When I say experience, I learned by experience. I didn't have any experience hiring, so it was a slow but sure, trial by fire.
Got it. And so early on, tell me about the fire. What?
Oh gosh, yeah.
What are some of the mistakes you've corrected through experience over the years and how you approach it?
Yeah, it's exactly the opposite of what I just said. I would not have the details laid out for individuals. I would not have clarity for what I expected of them, and then I'd be disappointed when they didn't live up to my expectations, which I hadn't verbalized or gotten agreements on. So it was basically the opposite of what we do now, where you have unspoken expectations of how things should go, beliefs for how people should operate that you've never really delivered to other individuals and said, here's how I need you to operate. We make training software, so it's kind of comical that I wasn't bringing clarity, because that's the whole job of training software, is to bring clarity to a role. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And I learned over time how unfair it is for individuals to be held accountable to things that they never knew about or agreed to.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite interview question?
I like it when people ask me, it's a good thing. I like it when people ask me what's my favorite Lessonly value, because I love talking about Lessonly values.
All right, give it to me.
Share them before you're ready is my favorite Lessonly value. The idea is we tend to perfect things in vacuums. We tend to perfect projects in vacuums, ideas in vacuums. We kind of wait till we're ready to share our ideas with the team. And generally that means a lot of cycles alone, working on things that may or may not be the right things. So the idea of sharing before you're ready is, how do we make sure that what's getting done is what's needed? And we do that by just communicating early and often when we have an idea. It's very uncomfortable for folks because they're perfectionists by nature a lot of the time, and they want to dazzle one another with their intellect and their ability to just kind of say, ta-da, look how awesome this idea is. But often when you do that, what tends to happen is we're getting things done that aren't needed. You've probably been in the meetings where somebody goes, look at this thing I've worked hard on. And you're like, why did you work hard on that? Has that ever happened to you, Adam?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So sharing before you're ready is just how we minimize those moments, because people are encouraged here, and not just encouraged, but they agree to doing it. They agree to say, hey, if I'm going to go in a hole and work on something, I'm going to come out of that hole very frequently to say, look what I'm working on. What am I missing? What's going well? What could I add? What could I remove? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's talk about your leadership team. You're not doing this alone. Certainly with 108 headcount, it's bigger than you. What characteristics in your leaders make them successful for the way you choose to run this business?
Yeah, we have a really nice diversity of, dominance and formality. So people who are really aggressive, and folks who are a lot more thoughtful and patient, and that really helps us balance one another out. We come to the executive team meetings each week, and all of us have our own natural inclinations. And I really like that those natural inclinations kind of rub up against one another every now and then, or pretty frequently, in a positive way, where, there isn't just one style on the team. There's styles that bump into one another and help us come to better ideas.
And what would you say is, for the leaders in your organization, what's the one thing that you think can be improved or coached to improve business performance, right? So what's the area of opportunity? And then what would you say are things that your leadership team is really good at today?
Yeah, I think we're the places that I'm always going to want us to improve are around camaraderie and clarity. So I want the leaders on our team to be building camaraderie with their direct reports. I want them to basically be modeling the behaviors that they want to see in their direct reports, so that their direct reports model the behaviors, those same behaviors, to their direct reports, and so on and so forth. So when I say camaraderie and clarity, how do we build mutual trust and respect? And then how do we create clarity for individuals to understand what matters, why it matters, what role they have in its pursuit? We're always going to need to get better at those things because they're constantly evading us. Camaraderie is something that you can build over time, but you have to manage it. Clarity is something that, one day you have it, and the next day maybe there's a sea change in the market, or there's a sea change in strategy, and now we have to recreate clarity. So if they're working on those two things at any given time, I'm really happy, and I'm probably never going to be satisfied that we're knocking that out of the park.
And those things are all really evolved from core values. I know you talked about your favorite, but take us through how you developed the core values. Is that something that came first, or did that emerge as the business matured?
Yeah, we didn't have a clue what our values should be. We actually were a couple years into the company, about 17 employees, before we formalized any values. And the way we formalized them was by asking all those 17 employees, when you see your teammates behave and their behavior really resonates with you and helps you make great progress and really brings joy to you, what are they doing? And that's how we came up to our first set of values. It was, hey, I really appreciate it when my teammates are having difficult conversations. I really appreciate it when they when other people allow me to make time for life, or when my teammates make time for life, when people share before they're ready, when they critique and love. Those are all things that we looked around the room and said, what are we doing right now that we don't want to stop doing? And actually, we just yesterday rolled out a new set of values where we took 3 of the values that had we have 7 values. We removed 3 of them and replaced them with three new ones to kind of make sure that from 100 to whatever the next milestone is, we all stay aligned. So that was really interesting and fun.
Let's talk about that. I've done in a previous episode, I referenced this concept, called the Dunbar Number, which you may be familiar with.
Robin Dunbar. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, human beings can only have 150 meaningful relationships. After that, it's a zero-sum game. Meaningful relationships where I know your name, I know a lot about you, I can actively manage the relationship. And so where many early stage companies making the transition to growth stage fail is that they have too centralized a mechanism for propagating core values across the new hire ecosystem, right? So that those teaching it, can't just be the few people at the top of the organization. You will undoubtedly cross this number in the near future. How are you thinking about making sure that the way you communicate and reinforce core values scales as your business scales?
Yeah, I love that question because I just spent a year writing them all down and spending copious amounts of time editing those writings and sharing them with the team, early and often to get feedback. So now our values are memorialized in a book where there are stories and there's just a lot of clarity around why they all matter. And the idea there is I can't be everywhere. And if I'm not being incredibly clear about why, how I want people to behave, well, then I shouldn't expect them to behave that way. So I was fortunate enough to really take the mornings for the past year, working on a book, for the sole purpose, well, for the initial purpose of just let's make sure the team's aligned. And then the idea was if it helps our team stay aligned, it's going to help other teams stay aligned because we're not, some wildly different creatures than any other teams. These behaviors that I'm asking people to take at Lessonly, they're just behaviors that generally provoke progress. So that was really important because I have a sense, like you're saying, that we're going to get very, very quickly, we're going to grow to that 150 person point. And it's not going to work the way we're doing it right now. So now we've got we got the book, we have lessons to back that information up, and it should be clearer than it's ever been. And I hope that really, really helps.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The role that storytelling plays in making core values real, we've all had the experience where it's a plaque in the lobby and everyone kind of ignores when they walk in the door in the morning, and having stories that reinforce it with real people who actually work there, it really matters. Take this in a direction I don't typically go because I have an expert on training and development with me on the show here. I mean, your core focus is employee training software, and it's not a business hierarchy is in. However, we see firsthand the impact that a lack of training and development content and tooling has on our customers' ability to retain talent. And when we survey the labor market, what we find is that career path and opportunities for growth are every year for the last 5 years has been the number one thing people look for. And so, all of that to say, how can training and development for companies that perhaps don't think that they can offer programs like this, what's the right approach? What should they be thinking about? And what are the lowest hanging fruit that early stage operators or CEOs can take on to start to develop programs that matter in this realm?
Yeah. So if I could ask you a question about your question, I'd love to talk about training, but I'd also love to zoom in on, you mentioned the word development. And when you think about development and making sure you mentioned the word career paths, that's a topic that I think is wholly separate from our conversations around training. They definitely relate. But the idea of, how do we develop people at Lessonly? My take is that managers guide folks' development, but every employee here has to own their own development. And it largely starts with reading, with finding mentors, with having peers. And then our job as managers is to understand what is the next rung on your ladder, and how are we helping you build the skills to get there. But when it comes to, when I think about our training software, I don't think, hey, here's how you develop into a great manager. I think here's how you understand what works and what doesn't in your role. That's really where we focus. As a salesperson, here are the motions that work really well in your role, and here's practice software to help you try them. Or for a customer service person, here's the new promotion, or here's the new thing we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. We'd love you to give it a try with practice before you go live with the customer. It's making sure that people have the latest and greatest playbook. But I kind of think about that. Certainly that helps people develop and knock their current role out. But I look at the development side and I say, it's incumbent on us to teach managers how to be good managers. But the idea of each individual, us developing people are not developed, they develop themselves, and we should be guiding that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll say from experience here at Hierology, what happened when, as we approach, the 200 team member mark here, is that there is a thirst for knowledge that helps prepare for what's next in someone's career path. And so that may be skill development. If in sales, that could be talk track development, that could be role playing, that could be different closing tactics or techniques, that could be generally upgrading broader perspective through business skills and just greater awareness of the world at large and what different industries are doing.
Sure.
In software development, that's new code and new skills, and so we have, what I could say is we are, our model used to be, particularly with software engineers, we'd say, here's a budget for training, put it where you think it's best used, right? We're going to allocate some dollars and let people decide. That's worked in engineering, but for the rest of the organization now, we've really had to make some investments and be really thoughtful about it. We added our first ever full-time sales trainer. I actually promoted someone internally to take on that role. And so, for us, what I know is our success in getting people where they want to be is going to be directly reflected in our investment and intention and teaching them what we know they want to know more about. And so we've just had to be much more directive in what we offer than we used to even a year ago.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and I think giving guidance for where to go to seek that development and really just coaching people that, the 16 years or 12 years that you spent in school, everything was guided for you. You had a syllabus brought to you every step of the way. And now school's over. And nobody ever kind of says at that moment, or very few people hear at that moment, that hey, it's self-guided from here on out. There's no more syllabi coming your way. And if you're really hungry to grow, you start investigating, start reading the books that define your field, start following the folks who you really respect, find out what they're reading, find out what they're studying, find out what they're learning. We want to be there to provoke those conversations and to provoke those ideas. But, we also want to make sure the ownership of the development isn't something where somebody's waiting to be developed. We want them to go out and start developing, and then we can really support that.
Of course. And so you're in your approach, and feel free to talk about, Lessonly and how you guys approach this from a product standpoint. But the premise is people, motivated individuals, when given the opportunity to be self-directed in their learning, if given access to the right content, will do so and thrive as a result. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, if they're trying to develop into that next role, I think, in their given role, we need to be kind of telling them what works. So I'm not saying, we make training software. So pushing that content to individuals that says, here's the next thing you need to know, or here's a change to the process that's really important for you to understand. Here's why we're changing the process. Here's how to do the process. Show me that you know how to do the process. Those things, we have to be putting in the effort to build the content that supports those changes, because people deserve clarity. But when it comes to them saying, my goal is to go from maybe I'm a software engineer right now and I want to be a CTO, we can really support that growth, but we can't do it for them.
Okay, fair enough. As we bring this to a close here, I'm curious, based on your experience in running a couple of different businesses, how would you summarize your philosophy as it relates to managing culture or the people side of the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. Today I would summarize the philosophy as if you want to see it, be it. So if you are leading and you want to see a certain behavior on your team, you have to exude that behavior. And until so a lot of us kind of give ourselves circumstantial ways out. We say, well, my circumstances don't allow me to be on time because I'm too busy, but I expect everybody else to be on time. Or my circumstances don't allow me to follow up promptly, but I expect everybody else to follow up promptly. I find that it's very easy to give ourselves circumstantial outs and then not apply that, and then not let other people have those outs, or assume that those other people know our circumstances. So they'll understand. We kind of delude ourselves into thinking people understand why we're behaving a certain way, but they'll also know at the exact same time that we expect them to behave differently. That just doesn't work. If we want people to behave a way, we have to behave that way. There's nothing. It's just, that's the way it is. So yeah, if you want to see it, be it, I think is a really good philosophy that I believe in. And it really forces me to reflect and say, am I being the things I want to see? And there's times when I come to answers where it's no. And then I'm like, well, why? And why would I expect anybody else to do it until I get it figured out? It's just really clarifying.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the final word. You've been learning from Max Yoder, CEO at Lessonly. Max, thank you, sir, for being with us on the program today.
Adam, good work. Thank you.
That's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen, for this week's episode of the Best Team Wins podcast, where we're featuring entrepreneurs whose exceptional approach to the people side of their business has led to incredible results. My name is Adam Robinson, author of the book, The Best Team Wins, which you can find online at www.thebestteamwins.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you here next week.
Thanks for listening to the Best Team Wins podcast with Adam Robinson. You can find out more information about Adam and his book, The Best Team Wins, Building Your Business Through Predictive Hiring, at thebestteamwins.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.